I always thought I knew my brother. We grew up in the same house, ate at the same table, shared the same childhood stories. He was the kind of older brother who fixed my bike when the chain fell off, who taught me how to skip rocks across the lake behind our neighborhood. To me, he was steady, quiet, dependable. But all it takes is one small accident to burn away years of trust. It happened on a Saturday evening. He had asked me to help him move some things out of his garage before he renovated it. He said it so casually, like it was nothing. I figured he wanted company more than anything. The garage light flickered as we lifted box after box into the driveway. Dust clung to the air, making me cough. Most of the boxes were the usual junk, old magazines, power tools, tangled wires he swore he might fix one day. But there was one box shoved into the farthest corner, duct taped 3 times over, with fragile scrawled across the top in a rushed hand. When I pulled it forward, the bottom gave out. It split open, and everything tumbled to the floor. At first, I didn't register what I was seeing. A silver bracelet, the kind you'd give to a girlfriend. A cracked cell phone with no case. A driver's license belonging to a woman I didn't know. And a photograph, an instant Polaroid, of a smiling face. The air around me felt heavy, like the moment right before a storm. I crouched down, picking up the license. The name wasn't familiar, but something about the face nagged at me. I'd seen it before. Maybe on the news. Maybe on one of those missing persons posters taped to the grocery store window. I swallowed hard. Before I could sort through more, I heard his footsteps returning from the house. Panic shot through me. I shoved everything back into the box as quickly as I could, forcing the lid shut before he stepped into the garage. "What happened?" he asked, wiping his hands on a rag. His eyes flicked to the box. "Bottom ripped," I said, trying to sound casual. "Guess the tape gave out." He stared at the box for a long second, then smiled. "Yeah, old tape. Thanks for catching that." Something about his smile unsettled me. It didn't reach his eyes. We loaded the box into his truck, and the moment passed. He didn't bring it up again, and neither did I. But my mind wouldn't let go of that driver's license. That face. That feeling. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts spinning. Why would my brother have someone else's ID? Why would he keep random jewelry and photographs? It didn't make sense. Unless... I grabbed my phone and searched the name from the license. My stomach dropped. She was real. And she was missing. The article was dated 2 years ago. It described a young woman who disappeared after leaving a party. Her body had never been found. I shut off my phone, heart racing. It had to be a coincidence, right? Maybe he found it somewhere. Maybe he kept it for some weird reason. But deep down I knew. People don't just find things like that. They don't keep them hidden away in boxes. I told myself I'd ask him about it, make him explain. But every time I pictured his face, calm and unbothered, I froze. What if he had an answer I didn't want to hear? The next day, I tried to act normal. We had dinner with our mom like always. My brother laughed at her bad cooking jokes, teased me about the way I cut my chicken. For a moment, I convinced myself I had imagined it all. Until later that night, when I went to grab something from his garage. He had moved the box. Not just moved it, hidden it. The corner where I'd first found it was empty. The space was swept clean, like it had never been there at all. That was when the fear really started. Because if he had nothing to hide, why would he move it? Why would he erase the evidence that had ever existed? And most of all, did he know that I knew? That night, I left my bedroom light on. For the first time in my life, I was afraid of my own brother. But that fear was nothing compared to what came next. I told myself it was nothing. That was my mantra the following week. Every time my mind replayed the image of that driver's license, I whispered, "It's nothing." It doesn't mean what you think. But once you've seen something you shouldn't have, you can't unsee it. The first sign came on a Tuesday night. I was heading home late after grabbing dinner. As I turned down my street, I saw my brother's truck parked 2 houses away from mine. The engine was off, the lights were dark, but he was sitting inside. I slowed my car, heart thudding. Maybe he was waiting for someone. Maybe he was on a call. But when my headlights swept across his face, he turned his head sharply, shielding himself, as if he didn't want me to know he was there. The next morning, when I asked casually why he'd been on my street, he didn't even blink. "I wasn't," he said simply. "You must have seen someone else." He lied so easily it chilled me more than if he'd admitted the truth. The second sign was even worse. I was scrolling through the local news on my phone when I saw a story about a girl who had gone missing 3 towns over. There was a blurry photo of her walking out of a convenience store late at night. My stomach dropped when I noticed the car in the corner of the image. It wasn't clear, but it looked like his truck. Same dent in the side panel. Same faded paint. Of course, I couldn't be sure. I stared at the picture for so long my eyes watered. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe my fear was twisting reality. But when I saw him that evening, there was a faint scrape across his front bumper that hadn't been there before. I started keeping notes. Dates he went out, places he said he was going, times he came back. I felt crazy, like some paranoid detective in my own life, but the pieces started lining up in a way that made me feel sick. Every business trip he mentioned matched up with a missing persons report from that area. The coincidences piled too high to ignore. One night, I made a mistake. I went back into his garage when I knew he was out. My hands shook as I searched. The corner where the original box had been was spotless, but I noticed something odd. The tool chest had a false bottom. I pried it open. Inside was a small notebook, worn and stained. The pages were filled with names. Each name had a date and a location written beside it. Some had little notes in the margins: red scarf, blue car, walked alone. I slammed the notebook shut, ball rising in my throat. This wasn't just paranoia anymore. This was real. I shoved the notebook back and left before he returned, but my heart wouldn't stop pounding. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard something outside my window. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but then I heard it again, the sound of footsteps in the grass. Slow, deliberate. I held my breath, not daring to move. After a few moments, the sound stopped. When I finally gathered the courage to peek through the blinds, I caught a glimpse of someone walking away into the shadows. The shape was familiar, the way his shoulders hunched, the slow, steady walk. It was him. I barely slept. Every creak of the house made me flinch. Every shadow felt like it was watching me. The next day he acted normal. Too normal. He joked about a football game, asked if I wanted to grab lunch. His smile was easy, his tone light. But all I could hear was the echo of those footsteps outside my window. The breaking point came a week later. I was sitting in my kitchen when my phone buzzed with a notification. It was from a local news site. Another girl was missing. I froze when I saw the photo attached to the article. It wasn't the girl that made my stomach twist. It was the necklace she was wearing. A silver pendant with a small, heart-shaped charm. I had seen that exact necklace before. In his garage. In the box. My hands went cold. I stared at the photo, my mind screaming at me to do something, to go to the police, to run. But I couldn't move. Because right then, I heard the sound of my brother's truck pulling into the driveway. He walked in carrying groceries, smiling like nothing was wrong. He set the bags down and looked at me. "You okay?" he asked, tilting his head. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." He studied me for a moment too long, his eyes sharp and unreadable. Then he nodded slowly. And for the first time, I wondered if he already knew that I knew. That night, I locked my bedroom door. But even with the lock in place, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing just outside, listening. By this point, I was living two lives. On the outside, I was still the same sibling, laughing at family dinners, exchanging casual texts, acting like nothing had changed. But inside, I was unraveling. Every time my phone buzzed, I expected it to be news of another missing person. Every time my brother looked at me, I wondered if he could see the fear in my eyes. I couldn't go on like that. I needed proof, undeniable proof. Something solid enough that I could take to the police. One night, when I knew he was out, I returned to the garage. My hands trembled as I pulled the notebook from the false bottom of the tool chest. This time, I forced myself to read more carefully. The names were all women. The earliest dated back nearly 10 years. Some had question marks beside them, as if he hadn't finished whatever he'd started. Others had chilling notes in the margins. Saw me coming. Cried too much. Buried by the river. I had to stop several times to steady my breathing. My chest felt tight, like the walls were closing in. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't paranoia. My brother had been doing this for years. But then something happened that nearly gave me away. I was putting the notebook back when I heard the crunch of tires in the driveway. Panic surged through me. He wasn't supposed to be home yet. I shoved the notebook down, slammed the false bottom shut, and scrambled out of the garage just as his truck door slammed shut. "Hey," he called, walking up the path. "What are you doing out here?" I forced a laugh. Forgot my phone in the car. I held up my keys as proof, even though my phone was already in my pocket. He looked at me for a long second, his eyes narrowing just slightly. Then he smiled. "Careful out here at night," he said. "Never know who's lurking around." The way he said it made my skin crawl. After that close call, I knew I couldn't risk searching again. But my paranoia only grew worse. Everywhere I went, I felt watched. When I walked to my car in the morning, I'd notice muddy boot prints near the door. When I left for work, I'd glance in the rearview mirror and swear I saw his truck following a few cars behind. I tried telling myself it was just nerves. But then came the night I woke up and found my bedroom door unlocked. I always locked it. Always. Yet that night, it clicked open with just a push. And on my dresser, sitting neatly in the center, was a silver bracelet I had never seen before. I knew exactly what it meant. It wasn't a gift. It was a warning. The next morning, he was in the kitchen making coffee like nothing had happened. He slid a mug toward me. "Rough night?" he asked. I froze. "What do you mean?" He shrugged. "You look tired." Then he smiled, sipping his coffee. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to grab the bracelet, shove it in his face, and demand answers. But I couldn't, because the way he looked at me told me he already knew I'd seen it. This was his game now. That day, I tried to distract myself by scrolling through my phone at work. But I made the mistake of searching his name online. Nothing came up, of course, no arrests, no police suspicions. He was invisible to them. But then I stumbled across a Reddit thread about unsolved cases in our area. One user wrote about a pattern: women vanishing near highways, usually after nights out. Another pointed out that the disappearances often happened on weekends. The timeline matched his business trips almost perfectly. My stomach churned as I realized other people had noticed the pattern, but no one had put a name to it. No one suspected the man who lived right next door. No one but me. That evening, we had dinner at our mom's house. She chatted happily, completely unaware of the silent war happening at the table. At one point, my brother leaned back, looking directly at me. "You've been quiet lately," he said, his tone light. "Everything okay?" My fork slipped from my hand. "Yeah," I said quickly. "Just work stress." He smiled. "Good. I'd hate to think something was bothering you." Our mom laughed and changed the subject, but I couldn't shake the feeling that his words weren't casual. They were a warning. That night, I lay in bed wide awake. Every sound made me jump. I stared at the ceiling until my eyes ached. And then, just as I was starting to drift, I heard it. A floorboard creaking. Soft, deliberate footsteps in the hall. I froze, holding my breath. The steps stopped outside my door. I waited, every muscle in my body screaming. Then, the doorknob turned. The lock held. A long silence followed. Then slowly, the footsteps retreated. I stayed awake until dawn, my body rigid, my ears straining for every sound. By morning, I knew two things with absolute certainty. 1. My brother was watching me. 2. And he was waiting for the moment I slipped. I didn't go home that night. After hearing the doorknob turn in the dark, I couldn't make myself step back into that house. I drove aimlessly for hours, circling empty streets, sitting in parking lots with the engine running just to feel safe. But as dawn broke, exhaustion pressed down on me like a weight. Against every instinct, I returned home. His truck was already in the driveway. The kitchen smelled of bacon when I walked in. He was at the stove, humming to himself like it was any other morning. "You're up late," he said without turning around. I froze. Couldn't sleep. He plated the bacon and set it on the table. Then he looked at me, smiling just a little too wide. "You really should lock your doors. You never know who might try to get in." My blood ran cold. He knew. He was telling me he knew. The rest of that morning passed in a haze. I tried to stick to normal routine, work, coffee, casual conversations, but every moment felt loaded, like every word could be my last. That night, I locked my door again. But this time, I placed a chair under the knob. Then I sat on my bed, staring at the dark window, listening. Hours ticked by. Nothing. And then, just as my eyelids began to sag, a voice whispered through the door. "You've been snooping." My heart slammed into my ribs. I didn't answer. The floor creaked outside my door as he shifted his weight. "You shouldn't have gone into the garage." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I bit them back, refusing to give him the satisfaction of hearing fear in my voice. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. Finally, he said, almost gently, "You don't have to be afraid. I'd never hurt you. Your family." Then he walked away. I didn't sleep, not even for a second. The next day, he acted like nothing had happened. He cracked jokes, watched TV, even asked if I wanted to grab takeout. It was like he hadn't whispered those words through my locked door. But that made it worse, because it meant he was in control. He had flipped the rules. I thought about going to the police, But what could I say? My brother whispers at my door and leaves me random jewelry? They'd think I was paranoid. They'd never connect him to the notebook without real evidence. And if they questioned him too soon, he'd know it was me. I was trapped. That weekend, I made another mistake. We were watching TV, some crime documentary about a cold case. I was trying to act casual, sipping soda, pretending my hands weren't shaking. But then the narrator on the show mentioned something about forensic evidence left behind. I must have reacted without realizing. Maybe I stiffened, maybe my eyes lingered too long. Because my brother suddenly muted the TV and looked at me. "You know what I've always thought," he said softly. "People who watch too much true crime, they start getting ideas. They start imagining things, seeing patterns that aren't there." I swallowed hard. "I guess." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Or maybe they just get too curious." My throat went dry. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Be careful what you look for. You might not like what you find." That night, I tried to leave. I stuffed some clothes into a bag and headed for the door. But before I could grab my keys, I noticed something. The bracelet, the one I'd found on my dresser. It was back, this time, sitting neatly on the driver's seat of my car. He'd been inside it, watching, waiting. When I walked back into the house, he was sitting at the table, flipping through a magazine. He looked up and grinned. "Going somewhere?" My chest tightened. "Just thought about visiting a friend." He tapped the magazine. "Good idea, but you really shouldn't drive tonight. Roads are dangerous after dark." I nodded, my hands trembling so badly, I had to grip the strap of my bag to steady them. He tilted his head. "Why are you shaking?" I forced a laugh. "Too much coffee." He smiled again, slow and deliberate. "Right, coffee." That was when it hit me. He wasn't just toying with me. He was letting me know I couldn't run. That no matter where I went, he'd be there first. I lay in bed that night, wide awake, realizing something terrible. It wasn't about whether I could prove what he'd done. It was about survival. I stopped trying to run. It wasn't a decision I made out loud, but something inside me just broke. I realized I couldn't outsmart him, couldn't escape him. He was always one step ahead, and the more I pushed, the more he tightened the noose around me. So I played the part. I smiled when he made jokes. I joined him for meals. I pretended to watch TV, laughed at the right times, acted like the same sibling I'd always been. And for a while, it almost worked. He seemed to relax. He even teased me less about staying up late or being too curious. But I knew better. The bracelet still sat on my nightstand, gleaming in the dark. Sometimes I'd wake up and swear it had moved, just an inch, just enough to remind me he could walk into my room anytime he wanted. And some nights, I'd hear it again, the soft creak of footsteps in the hallway, stopping outside my door. No knock, no words, just silence, then retreating steps. I started sleeping with my phone clutched in my hand, my thumb hovering over the emergency call button. But I never pressed it, because if I did, and nothing came of it, he'd know. And if he knew, it would be over. Weeks turned into months. The news continued reporting missing women. Faces flashed on the screen, names spoken aloud by anchors who didn't realize the monster was right here, sipping coffee in my kitchen. I kept my head down, saying nothing, living like a prisoner in my own home. Until one night, we were sitting at the table. He was scrolling through his phone, smirking at something. Then he looked up at me and said, almost casually, "You know, secrets don't stay buried forever." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. His eyes locked onto mine. Calm, cold. Then he smiled, leaned back, and changed the subject like nothing had happened. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind spun in circles, trapped in the silence. I got up, went to the window, and looked out at the dark yard. That's when I saw him, standing in the driveway. Not moving, just standing there, staring up at my window. I ducked back, my heart pounding, but when I dared to look again, he was gone. I don't know how much longer I can live like this. Every day feels like a countdown, though I don't know to what. I don't know if he's waiting for me to slip, if he's planning something, or if he just enjoys watching me squirm. But I do know one thing. He knows that I know. And sooner or later, that's going to cost me everything. Until then, I sleep with my door locked. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, I swear I can hear him breathing on the other side. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, I appreciate you more than you know. Stories like this leave us with one big question. What would you do if you discovered a family member's darkest secret? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading them. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want more stories like this one. Until next time, stay safe.